What's up, President Hose, whatever float you go, it's Relentless here, bringing you yet another Division build video. Today's video will be going over the extensive knowledge of the Banshee build and how to best optimize the Banshee build to get the most bang out of your buck. So stay tuned, and once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you be new to the channel, ground and pound that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so that way you know each and every time a new video goes up. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. So let's start with the basics. When it comes to talents, there are a plethora of different ones you could choose from and use, but the most importantly all depends on whether you're solo or in group play, such as Combat Medic. Use a medkit near allies to heal group members and proxies within 20 meters by 40%. Very, very important when it comes to group play. Also, Adrenaline. Medkit now gives 7 seconds of immunity from status effects. When faced with shock turrets, flame turrets, any kind of status effects whatsoever, but most importantly, the bleed status effect by way of Predator's Mark or the grenades that you get the bleed status effect from after you're hit. Very important. And now this is just a personal preference as far as what you should use and run depending on your build type. It all falls under precision, on the move, strike back, and of course the critical save. Critical save, use a medkit during low health to increase damage resistance by 20% for 10 seconds. This one more or less kind of goes hand in hand with on the move. Kill a hostile while moving to reduce incoming damage by 15% for 10 seconds. The key phrase is kill a hostile, such as if you are PvPing, just because a Nomad procs once, that's not necessarily a kill. You have to more or less actually kill them. It really works out well, especially in PvE, but we are more or less focusing on the PvP aspect of Dark Zone PvP, not to be confused with skirmish or things of that nature. We are more or less primarily focusing on PvP in the Dark Zone. So my personal preference is, of course, precision, headshot a hostile to pulse them for 10 seconds, adrenaline, critical save, and of course Combat Medic. Now, by way of skills, this is also depends on the players and the builds that and the skills that the other players in your squad is actually using. It varies from difference between squad play, solo, duos. It varies and is very situational. But for the most part, of course, run booster shot, temporarily increase damage and damage resistance for the affected targets, in addition to the normal healing effect. Also, by having another form of cleansing yourself from status effects, such as if your medkits are on cooldown, or if they are using the double cheese method of pred and shock turrets because they can actually hit moving targets. To apply their bleed, they have to have you standing still. So therefore, you want to utilize the immunizer. Now, for group play, if you have a dedicated healer, that changes things quite a little bit. If it's more or less a dedicated healer, they're running a box and more or less a defib, so that way you can more or less switch off of your booster and then go to pulse, or you can pretty much mix and match depending on who's running what in your group. But generally, these are the main three that I run. Also, it depends on who and what they're running in your group. You don't want to have everybody running the same ult. You want to have a variety as far as blues, yellows, and greens. So that will be dependent on your group. Now let me go over the talent and skills section of this build. Let's move on to the gear itself, and I will go over each individual attribute and the reasoning behind it and which is more beneficial, and the difference between exceptions to certain builds over these rules. So let's start with the chest piece. Roll 2 firearms and the major attributes: exotic damage resilience and health. Now in PvE situations, you probably want to stack enemy armor damage instead of the exotic damage resilience, but this build is specifically for the PvP side of things in the Dark Zone. So exotic damage resilience along with health are the top 2-tier attributes to have in the major attributes of your chess piece. And this particular chess piece, as you see I have here in the minors, ammo capacity, and then the mod slots we have stamina and health in both. Moving on to the mask. Roll to firearms maxed armor roll. Major attributes is 4% crit hit chance and the minors burn resistance. Also in the mod slot, 265 stamina and another more additive health onto that. Moving on to the knee pads. Roll to firearms as well, and the major attributes we have health, and the minor shock resistance, blind death resistance, and burn resistance. Now, on such as even on this build, along with all the other DPS builds, you always would want health on your knee pads and backpack, and the major attributes with a few exceptions. And one of those exceptions would be by way of Predator's Mark. Due to the simple fact of the 6-piece bonus of Predator's Mark, and reason why it is more beneficial for it to be rolled to crit hit damage over the health, is just the accumulation of the bleed damage makes it more potent and a lot stronger by having the extra crit hit damage onto that, because the bleed accumulates to the 120%. So if you add all of that up and then multiply it, do all the figures, get a PhD in math, it comes out that it being more beneficial on Predator's Mark to have crit hit damage on the backpack and knee pads versus the typical normal DPS build. You get more benefits, and as your build will be more optimal by having health in the majors and on your knee pads and your backpack. If you want confirmation and don't want to take my word for it, Wiz did a good video on it and actually explains it in a pred build of his. And for all the graphs and tables and all the math when it comes down to it, the charts and whatnot, Marco Style did an excellent video explaining the difference between additive and multiplicative bonuses and damage. So I would refer you to go over that if you want a more in-depth look into difference between additive and multiplicative damage. Banshee is one of those that has multiplicative damage, as its bonuses in the 5 and 3-piece variety, as you see, is the 5-piece 5% extra damage, and of course the 10%. But moving on, as you can see, we have another stamina and health and first aid self-heal. Sorry when I get on the subject of something and I get sidetracked, so I do apologize for that. But anyways, continuing on. On the backpack, roll to firearms. In the majors, health. In the minors, as you can see, burn resistance. It seems the reasoning behind burn resistance here, instead of ammo capacity, because usually I'm typically rogue more. So while rogue, all ammo is completely refilled every 30 seconds. So that is the reasoning behind that. And of course, it seems like all the D3s and nomads as of late, and everybody on their sun, is running fire turrets. So any kind of burn resistance stacked on it actually helps out a lot. And you'll see in my character sheet, I believe I'm at like 65% burn resistance. So it really comes in handy. And then moving on to the mod slots, we have firearms and health with 2 first aid self-heals. Now coming by the way of gloves, it's not the greatest of gloves. As you can see, my toughness reflects that. I'm missing 107 points by way of stamina, so that would make this my toughness a little bit more. So then I could probably switch things in and out and be right over 8k in firearms and still be around that 480 to 485k toughness. And then you want crit damage, SMG damage, and crit chance. And the Savage Gloves, crit hit chance is increased by 7% against targets out of cover. Now moving on to the holster, you want crit chance as always in the major attributes on DPS builds. And of course in the mod slot, 6% first aid self-heal. Now there are different variations and different ways in order to do Banshee. If you are the rogue police variety and get a kick out of hunting down manhunts all day, then you definitely would probably want to go with the 6-piece. And the 6-piece basically says, while not rogue, damage to manhunt status players is increased by 2% for each manhunt level the player has. Rewards for killing manhunt players are improved. So that would directly benefit the rogue police out there by utilizing the 6-piece. Now, the other variations of the Banshee build, you could go with Vigorous and 5-piece Banshee, and that would be my go-to if I'm running with a dedicated healer in my squad. And also, you can use a Barrett's Bulletproof Vest here. Rolled to the same way as far as exotic damage resilience and health and ammo capacity. It just depends on player preference, but in my opinion, I prefer if I have a dedicated healer in my group, then definitely going with the 5-piece and Vigorous Chest. Now, with not playing with a dedicated healer, but also in a group, one can make the argument that Vigorous would still be better, especially with the plethora of the immunizer you probably all each would have. And then, one waiting for the 10 seconds and then popping it. So that way you get the overheal and, pretty much rinse and repeat. Especially if you're stacked into the end of the hallway and you're bottlenecking everybody to you while you're manhunt or rogue or whatever the case may be. But still, even in that situation, I would prefer the Savage over that, especially with not having a dedicated healer. So that way I'm inflicting the most damage as possible and maximizing my crit chance. So that way, with the added on a multiplicative damage of Banshee added to the crit hit chance and crit hit damage with all that added on. So that way you're maximizing, getting the most potential and the most bang for your buck when it comes to the Banshee build as you see here. But if you prefer the Barrett's Bulletproof Vest over Savage Gloves, to each his own. Make it your own build. This is just my interpretation and how I utilize and go with the Banshee build. Hope you've enjoyed it so far. Let's move on to the weaponry. Now, as you can see, I'm running double houses, one with Vicious, Deadly, and Card Counter. Now, the reason for this first one with Vicious and Deadly Card Counter, let's say this will be for the mid-range variety. So that way I'm at the most potential, hitting the most potential of my crits as possible, as either I'm moving closer or they are moving closer to me when it comes to mid-range. Also, as a backup for the Deadly Unforgiving, even at mid-range, so that way when I am taking damage by one missing health segment, my damage is increased. 2 missing health segments, my damage is increased also. Now, also in my opinion, the other way, the better way, would be more or less the Deadly Responsive, since Responsive is also one of those talents for a weapon that gives you multiplicative damage, going along with the same theme of the Banshee. So if you're used to playing in tight quarters and up close and personal in your face, then I would probably go with Responsive in here instead of Unforgiving, just for that simple aspect. But like I said, it all depends on your particular playstyle and what talents you absolutely prefer. But the mods in my weapon is magazine size, crit damage, and rate of fire, because the 3% crit chance here in the magazine is not needed due to using precision. So therefore I am right at, if not right on, the max crit hit chance. And then of course in the optics, crit hit damage, optimal range, and crit chance. In the vent break, crit damage, headshot damage, and crit hit chance. And in the underbarrel, 19% crit hit damage, optimal range, and reload speed. Now my other SMG, it's basically the same, but since I don't have the Vicious talent, then I am utilizing the 3% crit chance in this magazine to somewhat still compensate for the loss of that 10% by way of Vicious. And so that way it only brings it down to a 7%, but I'm still close to that crit chance cap. And that's basically the same magazine, the mods in the optics and muzzle and underbarrel as you see as follow. So the only difference between both houses would be just one particular talent, where it be one has vicious, the other has unforgiving, and then one magazine has crit chance and the other has rate of fire. If you wanted to go with ARs, as you see there, prepared is another multiplicative talent. It gives multiplicative damage. Vicious, Unforgiving, and Competent is also, if you prefer to double AR it, I would rock this one, and then as my secondary, this one, just due to the fact of having Predatory, what I call the Poor Nomad's Resolve. Or you can even go with the Unforgiving, Deadly, and Responsive if you don't want to rely on more or less Competent by way of having to use a skill in order to proc it. And also, as another secondary, if you prefer Predatory, Deadly, and Determined, because I have a bad habit of being so slow when it comes to finishing people off or having to pull out a purple pistol to tap NPCs in the noggin. When I just found it so much easier just to mow down NPCs with this N4 here with Predatory and Determined already on it. So that way it helps me out, and I just prefer it over just carrying around the purple pistol. Only time I really pull up my pistol if I'm using a non-pred build and I still want to inflict some bleed on people, so I pull up my pistol with Harmful on it and just pretty much continue to troll them as they are coming in or whatnot. Or if I'm using the Colonel Bliss's holster and I'm tagging them on their way in, or I'm tagging them before I'm about to rush in just to get that additive bonus. But anyways, that's just my thoughts and philosophies on how I typically run the 5-piece Banshee. Make it your own, make it suit your playstyle, and don't play it and utilize it according to how somebody else has it and according to their playstyle. So I encourage you to make it your own. Just make sure you have health on your knee pads and backpack, exotic damage resilience and health on your chest piece, and of course crit chance on your holster as well as your mask, and then of course whatever weapon that you'll be using with crit damage and crit chance on your gloves. Sorry, I'm going to go through the damage before I go into and actually show you my character sheet. So first up, we have, of course, the Deadly and Vicious. So, white damage 26. Critting 457. Headshots 71 and 40. Now switching over to the Unforgiving. Basically the same. The only difference that it doesn't show here is actually for the missing health segments, and I will gladly grenade myself here to show you that. One missing health segment. As you can see, it goes to 28 and 62. And then we're back at normal. Let's see if I can drop my health some more below health segments. Okay, well, it doesn't seem like that's going to work out too well. But anyways, you will add another, I believe, 25% when 2 health segments are missing. So basically a little over 30K. Now with the booster shot, at 29. So as you can see, it works out well. So let's go over to the character sheet first with the Vicious and Deadly. As you can see, 53% crit chance, 118% crit damage, and then when you mix in the Savage Gloves, I'm at my crit chance cap. Then I'll scroll down and go through. And while I'm here, I will Go ahead and show you, see the 11% Psychic damage resilience, 33% blind death, 65% burn resistance, and 33% shock resistance. Now let's go over the Deadly Unforgiving. That's not it. That's more like it. 46% crit chance, 118% crit damage. Headshot damage is the same. Now with Savage on top of that, and then when you accumulate precision in, then I am also at crit hit chance cap as well with this SMG. But like I said, if you prefer 2 ARs, then you should be good to go too. Just whatever you prefer. I myself just prefer SMGs, and of course the house. But anyways, I hope it's been informative to you. Let me know how you prefer it and how you run it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed it, as always, ground and pound that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so that way you know each and every time a new video goes up. We'll see you guys later.